Thursday afternoon. Don't know what day of the week it is. So today we're looking at Disabled, the poem, Wilfred Owen. That's what we've been working on all week. And we're looking at the second half of stanza 4 today. So the word of the day we always have, just to try and develop your vocabulary, is siege, which is a noun, and it means a military operation in which enemy forces surround a town or a building, cutting off essential supplies to try and force a surrender. So an example, soldiers killed hundreds of people while the town was under siege. And today's spelling word to add to your bank for the spelling bee is genocide. If you're not sure what that is, look that up too. Our usual cheesy pun of the day, the hat says to the tie, you hang around, I'll go on ahead. And stanza 4, part 2. That's why, and maybe too to please his Meg. Aye, that was it. To please the giddy jilts he asked to join. He didn't have to beg. Smiling, they wrote his lie. Age 19 years. Germans he scarcely thought of. All their guilt, and Austria's, did not move him. And no fears of fear came yet. He thought of jewelled hilts for daggers and plaid socks, of smart salutes and care of arms and leave and pair ears, esprit de corps, and hints for young recruits. And soon he was drafted out with drums and cheers. Alright, so we're revising the questions that were on the page. If you haven't done them, this will just be a revision of the stanza. What reasons does he give for enlisting in the army? So he believed that he'd be viewed as a hero, and as we've mentioned, that would attract the ladies. He thought that it would be a bit of an ego boost to join the army and prove his bravery and show his masculinity. So when it says to please his Meg and to please the giddy jilts, Meg may have been his girlfriend at the time, or a girl that he was pursuing, and he might have thought, mistakenly, that she'd be impressed by him in a uniform and joining up. However, it didn't quite go according to plan, because the word jilts is someone who has been rejected, so that shows that, he has been rejected by women in the past. We don't know if it's Meg or someone else. So there's a sense of a bitter tone here as he's thinking back. So he thought that by enlisting, he might be get all the girls that jilted him to change their mind and prove that he's a good catch sort of thing, and that they made a mistake. And that's why they were giddy, because they were obviously a bit foolish at the time, and that now their minds will be transformed. So why were the soldiers smiling as he joined the army? So he talks about the authorities smiling. So he didn't have to beg. Smiling, they wrote his lie, aged 19 years. So this sort of goes back to the army being willing to accept any person or any volunteer. All you had to do was sort of show willing, and there'd be just a couple of straightforward forms, quick medical that consisted of hardly anything, and that was you joined. So the pain and trauma of war was a secret. Obviously the propaganda at the time made it all glorified and positive to try and encourage people to enlist. So the young naive boys would be, had their eyes, the rose tinted glasses on, so they didn't really have time to acknowledge the actual truth or find things out. So it was quick and straightforward, so that they didn't have time to change their minds. Smiling here is a bit of a strange word, because it could be quite a sadistic idea. Owen suggesting that the authorities were culpable and responsible for their part in all these young men's deaths. So they know that war's not this amazing positive thing. So it's almost like they're, signing their lives away. So Owen creates this wicked image here of the authorities who have a part to play in basically destroying the youth and innocent of men, and incorporating lots of deaths later on. So they didn't ask too many questions. They were just happy to have the volunteers. They turned a blind eye to people that were underage. You didn't have to prove that. Now, remembering that in the previous stanzas, one of the quotes was that the soldier was younger than his youth, so he looked really young for his age, which should have been pinpointed and highlighted by the authorities, but even though he was so fresh-faced, they didn't care, you know, so that just proves that. So there's a sense of contempt here and bitterness from Owen about that, because he should have been prevented from joining. And obviously the lie, as we know it, is that he was underage, just like a lot of men were at the time. You know, it was young boys that went out, so it was the peer pressure, you know, if your friends were signing up, or the positive image that war was portrayed as by the propaganda that, you know, forced these, well, not forced, but, you know, that sort of persuaded these vulnerable men to enlist. You know, your country needs you, that sort of idea. The sense of, you know, you're doing your part, and so they felt that they had to. It just shows that sense of naivety here, because he says Germans he scarcely thought of, and no fears of fear came yet. So he doesn't actually know what the war's all about. He doesn't know the politics behind it or what's actually happening. What he talks about in a minute is why he joins up. There's no real reason why. He doesn't know the true dangers that are out there. And so he just shows that immaturity, because he doesn't have, in ignorance, because he doesn't have the knowledge about the politics behind it or why Germany and Austria are part of it. So, like we've said, he enlists without much thought. It's quite a rash, impulsive decision, which just shows, you know, that's obviously like, say, your youth. You just, you know, you're sort of carefree and young. But that was why they had no fear of fear at this point, because it was all glorified. The second fear in this has been given a capital. So the capitalisation basically symbolises that it's a person, so it's been personified, which could symbolise the Germans, who are the ones that we should fear. So it also gives it importance. So Owen does this again to emphasise that war should be terrifying, and it is terrifying, the reality of it. But there was pressure on young men, you know, just like, don't show your feelings, there's nothing to fear, you'll be fine. So list all the things he imagined about war as he joins up. So the first one is he thought of jewelled hilts for daggers and plaid socks. So this is Owen starting to create a long list of reasons, and they're all pretty meaningless and empty. There's no real deep patriotic feelings here. It's all this idealised view and romanticised view of war. So these young men were very impressionable and were enticed by the propaganda, so they were lured into signing up. He then goes on to say of smart salutes and care of arms and leave and pay arrears. So they're all positive things here. So it's all, you know, he thinks that he'll return home a hero. It's the idea of young men getting the chance to explore the world, to travel, to do this part of a big adventure. You know, that he doesn't imagine the terrible reality of war. Then we've got the smart salutes and care of arms and leave and pay arrears. So obviously grammatically that's not how you would do a list. You just do a comma or a semicolon. So and has been done deliberately, and again that just mirrors his childlike excitement. You know, it's the idea of him being young and naive. So it's like and you know, like a kid sort of telling a story. So it just shows that sort of excitement, which just proves that he was naive and delusional in his views. We've got sibilance of smart salute, and we've got smart salute. So we've got, you know, two sound effects going on here, which emphasises the two words. So the young men believed that the army would offer them structure and routine, which was what, you know, they were quite positive about that. They wanted that sort of order in their lives. But the truth was, obviously, it was nothing but. It was all full of chaos and blood and gore and confusion and, you know, of everything else. But it was portrayed as that by the propaganda. Care of arms, that refers to the propaganda posters where, you know, they were all encouraged to play their part because it was the right thing for their country. Leave, so again, that just suggests even before he's enlisted, he's just thinking about being back home again with his uniform, impressing all the women and everyone around him, thinking he's a hero. Pay arrears, again, this is a sort of another valid reason for him joining, is just that he's quite excited about the idea of the money that he's going to be earning and that his future financially will be mapped out. So they're all quite, you know, empty reasons that aren't very impressive at all. Esprit de corps, and hints for young recruits. So obviously the word young has been added by Owen to highlight their youth and innocence. Esprit de corps, the propaganda, it was a propaganda motto encouraging the young men to join, so it just means, it translates as spirit of the body. So it's just the idea of a group of people who all have a set of shared belief, you know, that they can all work together for a goal. So he thought, and the other men thought, that the army would offer that sense of camaraderie, and that links back to the football matches where they were all united as a team, and he was the man of the match, the hero of the day, so he obviously hoped that that would be the same in the army. So imagining the hero's welcome as he returns home as part of it as well. You know, so basically his reasons for enlisting are that he wants to be idolised, he wants to have a nice uniform and look handsome, and the routine and all the benefits in terms of travel and leave and pay and the camaraderie and friendship excites him. So it all just sums up that, thinking back in hindsight, all of his, you know, reasons for joining were romanticised. Just shows that immaturity and naivety which was shared by a lot of young men at the time. And lastly, the stanza finishes with the quote, and soon he was drafted out with drums and cheers. So what does that suggest about people's attitude to soldiers? So before they left, you know, the noise of the crowd, the drumming, the cheering, that sort of echoes back to the football game where you go mad, if, you know, for your team and cheer them on. So the crowd, the people around him, the public were supportive and enthusiastic about soldiers, cheering them off, waving them off with their flags. So the scene was very much a replica of what the propaganda posters promised, you know, so of what lay ahead. So because of that, they would be under the impression that everything else was true. So, you know, it was all positive and the future looked bright in the army and it was a fantastic thing to do. And obviously that was certainly not the case. So in summary, the second part of stanza 4, this is Owen's criticism of the authorities for being culpable and responsible for allowing very young men and underage boys to enlist, which ultimately destroyed their lives. If they weren't killed, then, you know, they were either physically injured or mentally injured, which would impact for them forever. The innocent young men's delusional views of war are emphasised here, the romanticised positive ideal of it, and obviously this particular soldier's list of things just shows that he's a little bit vain and arrogant, which is obviously representative of some young men, and there's a sort of creates this sense of empty patriotism that he didn't join up for valid reasons, and this is him wondering why now. Why on earth did I do this, when he looks at his body that's permanently disfigured and disabled? Okay, so on Monday we're going to finish the poem by annotating stanzas 5 and 6. If you haven't done so, please subscribe to my channel, go on to the Aim Higher Facebook page and join that. All the PowerPoints are on there to help you add, you know, to your revision, and there's sheets and worksheets on the poem as well. If you're not on Facebook to join that, then all the resources are also on Google Classroom, and there's a link too. If you'd like to say thank you for my help, then that's what to do. Just send me a couple of quid or whatever you can afford to that address if you like. Alright, thanks very much for tuning in. Bye!